Hello, I'm Mr. Polk and welcome to my kitchen. Today I'd like to show you the pulled pork. If you remember from the demo, I showed you the cuts of pork. I did this from the picnic shoulder, so from the lower leg. I made a rub mixture, and I have that recipe on the Canvas site. Just mix all the spices together, rubbed it over, and then it goes in the oven, a little bit of water in the bottom of the pan, and it bakes for a good 5 to 6 hours. You want to bake it until pretty much it falls apart. I mean, you should be able to rip it apart, and that's where the whole idea of the pulled pork comes from, is that you then can just take your chunks of pork and you can just rip them apart. You can either put on a pair of gloves and do it, or some people like to use 2 forks and put it down and rip it apart. Whatever method works for you is fine, but you want to go ahead and shred it. But the meat definitely has to be cooked long enough that it can shred like this, okay? So I'm going to get rid of that, and you can see it has a nice brown edges and everything. That's how it roasted really nice in the oven. Now, we want to combine this with our barbecue sauce. The barbecue sauce I showed in another video. It's a homemade sauce. It's right in between. It's got a little bit of sour, a little bit of sweet. And you're just going to, put some in and then mix it around. And you want to get it covered, get it coated, and then you can decide how wet you want to make it. It definitely, go a little wetter than you think, because it definitely soaks it up. When the meat sits, it's going to soak it. And if you're doing this hot, like here, I have the meat just came out of the oven. The barbecue sauce I had simmering still, so it was hot. So I'm able to combine this, and it's good to go. If I wouldn't have, you just got to combine everything cold and then put it back in the oven, and then you can reheat it. But there you can see a really nice pulled pork. Now, that pulled pork has the barbecue sauce again that I showed in the other video. It starts with bacon and everything else. It's really nice. What we're going to do here is plate it up just a little bit of fancy, a little elevated. I mean, you could easily do this on rolls, buns, that kind of thing. We're going to take our plate. And one of the other recipes that I have is the cornbread. And I didn't demo the cornbread for you because you went through the baking units. You know how to make a quick bread. The cornbread is a quick bread. I mix all the dry. Remember, you have to put cornmeal and flour because cornmeal doesn't have the gluten. Mix that together. Mix my wet. It was almost like the muffins with the melted butter. And then I just cut it into little circles. So we're going to put a circle on the plate for service. And then what we're going to do is take some of our pulled pork. And the idea is to just mound it on top. So you're making kind of like a solo or a little open face sandwich, and we're just kind of mounding that pork on there so that when you eat through it, you'll get the pork and the barbecue sauce, and then you'll get into that wonderful little cornbread layer. Okay, so put just a little bit more on there. All right, that looks great. And then to finish it off, like with all southern things, we're going to put on some slaw. Now, again, I have the recipe on Canvas. I didn't go over this. It's just a matter of cutting the red cabbage and green cabbage. I just use a knife, cut real thin slices. I like that because it gives it a rustic look. Okay. I think if you chop it up, a lot of times it looks not as rustic. And then on the recipe I have for the wet mixture, it's just sour cream, mayonnaise, a little bit of cider vinegar, a touch of sugar, a little bit of mustard seed, and then a splash of hot sauce. And it doesn't make it hot. All the hot sauce does is kicks up the flavor a little bit. So here you can see a finished dish of something that could look really elevated. It's got the cornbread, it's got the pulled pork, and then it has the slaw on top. And it just has a nice look of colors and textures. You've got the pork that melts in your mouth, you've got the crispiness yet of the cabbage, and you've got that softness of the cornbread. It just all works together. Now, the same thing with the ingredients, you can also do something else. You can use that same rub, okay, and use the same barbecue sauce, and you could do the short ribs that I showed you on the other video. The short ribs were rubbed the same way. They were put in the oven in a pan, a little bit of water, and they were just allowed to roast for the same amount of time, a couple hours. You're looking for the bone you start to see shrinkage along the bone, and then the meat falls apart. If you poke it with your finger, it breaks apart. Then as you get towards the end, that's when I brush the barbecue sauce on it, put it back in the oven. And I do like to put it back in the oven because, or you can even finish it on the grill, because as you can see the caramelizing and stuff of the barbecue sauce, it just tightens it up. And then if you wanted to present that, you could cut them in 2 sections. You could put 2 ribs on a plate, a little chunk of cornbread. I even use the end chunk so you see the nice brownness on the edge of the cornbread, and then just a nice little pile of the coleslaw. So there you can see, using the same ingredients, all right, as far as the sauce and the rub, but doing them on 2 different cuts of meat. One being the rib that came from the loin section, and then another one being the picnic shoulder coming from the picnic shoulder section on the lower leg. So thanks for cooking with me today, and I can't wait to cook with you real soon right here at Mr. Pope's Kitchen.